Hi, I'm Vishal and I created this 7-minute animated short film using Agent 1 on Invideo. This is the raw and real breakdown of how I used AI agents to supercharge my workflow. In this video, you'll learn how to use AI video agents, creating a treatment note, character sheets, keeping character consistency throughout your generations, creating storyboards, and other tips and tricks of using AI agents that'll make your production pipeline 5x faster and get rid of all the grunt work. I'm doing an animation film because you can tell vivid stories with a lot of creativity in animation films, and the emotions that an animated film brings out really makes you feel like warm and fuzzy inside. The story was about Hachiko and a professor. It was based in Japan in Shibuya, and it was all about the bond that they shared for several years. Unfortunately, the professor passed away at the college that he would teach at, and when the train came back and the doors opened, Hachiko just didn't see the professor. I always wanted to create like a little film out of it and tell the story of Hachiko to people where they could go through the same emotions like he probably did. When you go through my workflow, that will help you to optimize your process on how to create using Invideo. I have done some previous research work on the story of Hachiko and certain beats that I want to go with. I've done my research and I've split it into like 3 main acts, which is very basic, and I think all of us must be doing that when it comes to short films. You might have another workflow, which is great because Agent 1 kind of adapts to your workflow. So let's just get into what Agent 1 is in terms of the interface, how you can use it, and the technicalities of it. Now, we will be using Agent mode, which has Agent 1. We click here, we can type in what is the subject matter that we would want to create. Here, I'm creating an animated short film, so I'll write that. You can make multiple agents, by the way. So this is the first agent that we're starting off the project with. As we go along, we will be able to create more agents, and we'll get to that at a later point of time. That you think that this is your style and you shouldn't like deviate from it, surely you can give it to the agent. And they know the way to prompt certain models, which models to go to, the way stories are told. So that just like really helps when you get to the creation of the film. So let's type in my next command. Like I said before, I've already done some research on the story of Hachiko, and I've created this document which kind of has the core themes, the emotional quotients, the idea of where it's set, and I've also like a script, a work in progress script, so that Agent 1 understands what the details of the story are, right? Like think of it like as a PPM, like a pre-production meeting document of sorts, but it doesn't have any visuals right now. We can obviously jam on that. However, if you do have visuals, if you do have references of something that you want to create, you can add that into your document. Preferably it should be like a PDF, or if you don't have a document, you can just jam with the agent like how I'm talking to it now. You can just jam with it and like create that document, and then it'll just have context about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to like upload that document. Now you can see the agent is active on the notebook page. If you can see this little cursor over here, this is my animation film director agent, my assistant for my film and executing the tasks that I've asked it to do. Okay, so what you can see now is really interesting. Basically, the agent is filling in the context that I've given it in the document, adding every little detail about the project that is within it to the context tab, like the characters, the story flow, what this project is about, the rules that I might set at the beginning of the project, or you can alter those rules at any point of time. Anything in context can be changed and altered at any point of time. It's got back to us with, so great, right? Like it already knows like what the next steps are. You do not have to follow exactly what it tells you. It's your assistant, right? Like, however, it still does have certain intelligence built into it so that it'll kind of like nudge you towards the right steps that we as filmmakers would take. Okay, so let's go to the next bit of things. I think while there was a certain style written in the document, I wasn't really convinced about it. So I'm just going to ask the agent if it knows any kind of animation styles. Like we can experiment with it and then we can lock one of those in. Okay, the agent's at work. I've told it to do some research because I was not sure of the style that I want to go with. So essentially, I've asked it to do some research online to figure out like what the different kind of styles are, and then I can have a look at those videos and get back to it on what to work on next. Okay, so here we have some options that the agent has come back with some links. That's amazing, right? Like it's just gone online, done some research and figured out like some animation styles, which is it's pretty cool. Like it's blowing my mind, guys. And the best part is like, yes, we do know LLMs do this, right? But you don't have to go anywhere else. You can just do it with Agent 1. It does everything for you. That's the best part. you are still within this universe, and you have to just go out of it when you need to look at a video or a reference or some of those things, right? Like otherwise everything is consolidated into this one space, which is just great, like not having like 100 tabs open. I've gone through the styles and I've decided what I like to go with, the 3D modern animation style, because I just feel it's warmer for the story and it's more fun with more details. You as a director can take your call. What I've told it to do is, because I am a bit like on the fence in terms of which style to pick, I've asked Agent 1 to kind of take 3 random shots from the script that I've given it and use those 3 same frames to be created in the Ghibli style and the 3D animation style. So that will help me probably decide and get closer either to deciding if I should go for one style or I should go for the other. Just for us to understand, it's going to create the images on its own. I am not going to prompt to create those images. So what we spoke about before, right? Like the whole idea of context. Now, because it understands what the film is about, it has the script, it has the story, it has the idea and emotions that I want to put out, it's going to go through all those items and kind of pick the 3 frames from probably 3 different scenes and create those just to show me the different kind of styles. I am not getting into the details of the prompt, I'm not getting into the details of what word should come when, how to engineer this prompt, which model to pick. It's just going to use its intelligence to pick the right technical things. So the agent has the intelligence for it to execute the task, but we are still pushing it in the direction that we want it to go in, right? In terms of structures, visuals, exactly what we want. We know what's in our mind. We just need to articulate that in some way and tell the agent, and it'll figure out how to get that executed. Check these visuals out. They're so nice. Look at the light, the detail that's actually there on the clothing, the dog. AI models have come a long, long way. Again, I've not touched it at all. Like, we've not gone into detail. So this is great. So usually what happens is the agent kind of like creates 3 different images, but I just realized that I want them to be in the grid style so that there's continuity. So I'm just going to tell the agent that. New grids are ready. Pretty cool. So all I did is told the agent that I would prefer that if there are 4 frames in one and a banana grid. It kind of helps keep the consistency, right? Because we've always, I'm sure, seen the hacks for Nano Banana where we can create multiple grids in it. So I just felt like that would be better. I prefer that as my process. So after seeing the frames, I think I'm really leaning towards the modern 3D animation style. I just feel like that's more something that I vibe with. So I'm gonna go with that. So as you can see that every thread has image numbers. So if there are some edits that are being made, that will come in the same thread, right? So I can just take the number of the image and it just understands. So if I say that, okay, so I like image 5.1, 5.1 is written over here, it'll understand that and it'll add it to the style. So for the next step, I've told Agent 1 that I want to also start building the characters. So for my process, I always begin with confirming the kind of style in terms of referencing and the look of the film, and then move to characters, and then I move to the location. So first I'll lock in the characters. Specifically, I could do one at a time, or I could do both at the same time. Once it gets back to me on what it plans are the next steps, we can discuss that, and then I can tell it to action both the things in the same text message that I give it, or I can do it one by one also. That's fully up to me. That's fully up to what you're comfortable with, how much time you want to allocate to creating each character, and how much detail you want to put into creating each character. Oh, that's a great point, right? Like, I would tell it at a certain point of time, but it's already got back to me because Hachiko kind of ages as the film progresses, right? We see him in a happy stage with the professor, then we see him in the present state, and then he suddenly starts aging because we want to show the time lapse of how much time has gone by, but he's still waiting for the professor out of love and hope. So that's a great point that Agent 1 has got on to. So it's also recommended that we start with character sheets, which again is a really cool bit because I was going to just tell it to create character sheets, and that is part of my process, but it kind of nudges you, like I mentioned earlier. Like before you get into it, it'll tell you that we should do this. Now it's up to you if you want to follow that or you don't want to follow that. So I am going to follow that. What I also usually do, because it's inspired by a real story, I kind of like to reference what the actual character looked like. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm just going to go to Google and I'm going to just I will tell the agent. I like to add certain nuances, like if I can get something like in the image that we just saw, right? Like Hachiko's ear is kind of always folded down. I think even in the statue, right? Like it's kind of folded down. I think that's a nice touch to add so that you can relate to the character a little more because it was a real character in reality. So I think that'll be a nice touch. I will just drop in the screenshot that I just took so that I'm just clear and specific about what I want. So we have got some options for Hachiko's character design, and like we had discussed in the beginning, right, like when I had given that reference about Hachiko's one ear being bent over, just as a nuance to the real dog that existed in Japan in like the 1920s. It just helps build that character and makes it more relatable, according to me, when we're depicting it in the film. These are like small nuances that the character has. And Agent 1 has understood that and it has created something on those lines, which is great. Like all the options that we're getting have that little fold on the ear. So that's great. So another very cool thing that you can see that the agent does is that it kind of sees the images that are being generated and bases my brief that I've given it. If it doesn't adhere to that because of certain model restrictions or certain prompts that don't work, it's experimenting on the prompts for you rather than you doing it yourself. So it kind of rejects it and it keeps experimenting to figure out how to get the best output. So right now it's generated a bunch of options for me, and you can just hit that red button that was here like a second ago and it'll stop generating more options. So we have a bunch of options right now, and I think I'm just going to go with one of these because they are quite on point. Okay, so I've told the agent that I like image 7.3 for my main character of Hachiko. When Hachiko grows older, we need a version of him then too. So I'm just completing my character sheet for the older version of him so that we have that character sheet ready when we want to generate the frames. And in case we want to do reference to video, we already have that character sheet again so that we don't need to iterate on that at that point of time. I can just go through the versions now and lock in those characters. So that's done. I'll also now, basically you can give it instructions, right? And those rules which will update in the context. Right now, because it's going through and rejecting images on its own, probably you want that to happen, probably you don't want that to happen. So right now I'm going to tell it to always discuss it with me before actioning the changes. Okay, so we're done with the Hachiko character sheet and now we'll move on to the professor's character sheet. Great, so I've given it the details and the screenshot of how the professor actually used to look. So maybe we can iterate from there in terms of where we want to head with the look of the professor for the film. While I've given a screenshot of how the professor actually used to look from archives that are available online, I think what you can also do is like give a more detailed description of exactly what you want, and then you can build off of that. So you can jam with the agent to figure out like what is the exact look that you want your character to have. And once that jamming is complete, then you can action it to create images so that you can see character sheets. Obviously, my document that I fed it in terms of the visual language, etc., already had that. That is why the agent is able to understand and stay within those guardrails of sorts to create what I want, something closer to what I want. So you can always jam with it or put that into the documentation that you upload at the start of the project, and you should be good. Quite cool. It's kind of on point with the reference that we had. So in case your characters are kind of close, but you want to kind of iterate on the prompt, you can do that too. So what we can do is essentially, we can close the agent window and this will open your notebook, which is your entire generation sequence, right? So here, when you click on an image, you can see the prompts that were used, you can see the attachments that were used, everything is here. So if you want to take full manual control, you can do that. So now I wanted to try out a certain prompt. We can do that here. We can use ingredients, we can add images, multiple things, number of generations, just like you would prompt before, right? And here are more details of 2K, 4K, the amount of thinking that we need to do. We'll go back to the agent. If I just click here, the agent chat will reopen. Right now it's thinking and figuring out what to do basis the changes I've given it. So while I'm limiting myself to like 3 options and 4 options, you can tell it to give you 10 options. Like that's cool. And you can also tell it that you want a varied set of options. Like you don't want the same option, right? Like you want to see different kind of looks. You can tell it that. Like you want distinctly different looks for each person. If you go further in detail and define and describe that, that's even better, because it'll follow what you say to the T and figure out the prompting for that. Okay, so I've made a bunch of characters for the professor, a bunch of character sheets, some permutations and combinations, like you can see over here, that I've been iterating with the agent with. I feel like I want to try and use Nano Banana Pro instead of Nano Banana 2, because I think that it excels at certain bits and does better while creating characters probably. So I just want to test it out. Maybe I get exactly what I want with Nano Banana Pro. I have some good options, but I still feel like I can fine tune it a bit more. So I think I really like this image 11.1. So I am going to tell the agent. I just want a few changes in the costume so that I can get my base character locked. So usually I'm as descriptive as can be with the agent. So for example, to confirm the character, so I've said that once you create it, I'll confirm it, but I don't want it to confirm it just before that, because then it'll feed it into context. That's why I've told it only once I confirm, then we can go in and lock the character of the professor. The reason being is that maybe that Nano Banana image that it generates isn't perfect, and we don't want to go through the idea of it being built into context and it has to be deleted and then we want to put another one in, right? So that's why I always tell the agent that this is what I want to do and this is what I don't want to do, so that it adheres to those parameters. Another interesting thing that you can do is that while I like to type and chat with the agent, it's fun chatting with Agent 1, but a lot of people like to use speech-to-text softwares or apps that you can talk to, and then it just transcribes it into the chat box, so that it's like quicker and faster and they think on the fly, right? Whatever you're comfortable with, you can do that. That kind of like helps the process and your workflow. It makes it faster, jamming with the agent. So I would recommend doing that too. Okay, so it's made the image. It's made the edits that we wanted. The character is the same. We can see that it has used the attachments that I had called out in the beginning. So I'm not completely sold on the color of the trench coat, so I've asked it to give me like 5 options so that I can again go through and like decide which one fits best. Okay, great. So it's just given me multiple options to go through. Here I can tell it like I want to see like a bunch of options so that I don't have to experiment on the prompt, on attaching the images again and again, because the prompt box gets empty. Yes, you can reuse the prompt, but it's still a lot of grunt work to do. So the agent is doing that for you, right? Like while it does exactly what I say, if I give it some insight in terms of like I want the clothing to work as a whole and don't just change the trench coat, it should do it, and it should give me like 7 more options like I've asked it to do, and then you can just pick the one that works for you. So hopefully we get something cool. Let's just go through like how much we iterated on it. So we started here, we created all these images that you can see. I wanted character variations, and after I got what I want in terms of the character, his height, his look, his face, and his characteristics, then we went on to the costume, his main costume. It would take me like hours to create so many options. But here I am with like loads and loads of options that I could choose from, because something was not vibing with what I had in mind. So I could just iterate and reach the place where I wanted to be. So what I usually do is I always create all the variations that I need for the characters. So now that our base professor is kind of locked, I would want to create a character sheet for the professor in different costumes. I would also want to create a character sheet of him without the cap that he's wearing, because he kind of is like bald. So the AI always needs to see what the character is exactly, right? Or else it'll kind of hallucinate and imagine something that's under the cap. So we don't want to do that. We always want the character to be seen as we see it on the character sheet. There are instances where it's okay and it's fine and it works, but usually if you stick to creating the character sheet always for every instance of the character, it's better. You'll always have a cohesive look in your film. So what I'm going to do now is like I'm going to tell the agent that we need to create all these variations, and hopefully the agent can create it on its own. We have the professor locked now in character, which is image 12.18, which I've told the agent, and now I've also told it that I need variations in character sheets for the costumes and for certain characteristics to be seen, like the bald head without the cap, So using those, we can further create our storyboard, right? It'll be really useful when we're creating our storyboard. Great. So what I'm going to do is, until it's making all these images, I'm going to go and take a quick coffee break. Okay, so I'm back, and let's see if the agent has been able to create all the costume variations and options that I asked it to create. It had given me a plan of what it's going to execute. Let's make all of them, and it's gone and created all the 7 options. That's awesome. Here we can see the options. That's great. Like when I was just having a coffee break, it continued doing that work for me. Okay, so it's created the character sheet that I wanted for his a little like casual home attire. Just go over the document that I'd uploaded in the beginning. It basically had the script. The script was broken down into Act 1, 2, and 3. I had done this not only because of the story, but because it helps the AI work in parts. And I like to proceed in my workflow by finishing one bit first, right? So I'm not overworking the AI where it kind of loses context down the line. I like to lock in on something and then move forward, like do 25%, 25%, and then move on. So what I'm going to tell Agent 1 now is that I want to work on just the locations that are there in Act 1. So let's see how that goes. I like the warm light coming in from the left to the open door. Seating, etc. is on point based on our story. Okay, so we have a bunch of images for the professor's house exterior at dawn, but they don't seem to be in the vibe that I want it to be in. So what I'm going to do is I am going to search for some references for some Shibuya homes, which maybe if I reference, it'll help me get closer to what exactly I want. So because these houses are looking like really massive and luxurious, like a professor wouldn't be staying in such a luxurious house. So I've told the agent that if we can create something more like image 16.1, which is like narrower lanes with like smaller and modest houses. So if we can create something on those lines, that'll be more apt for the professor's house. So let's see what it comes up with. I asked it to create 2 more, and then it came like way closer to what I want. Like I like this, the narrow by lanes, and it makes it feel a little more homely. Like, yes, there is the hustle bustle of the city where the station is, and that's where they used to walk from. That built their bond. I feel like working on the house for me is important. That's why I'm making so many variations of it. I just really like this image. So I think I'm going to go with this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is that I still want it to be closer a little bit more in terms of the architecture, because I like those sloping roofs of Shibuya Station. So I am, again, referencing like we all would do for any other project, even in the traditional way. Referencing is like the best way to go closer to what you want to achieve, so that the agent kind of understands it a bit better. After giving it the reference, I think it's like closer to the real thing. The light pole, the electricity pole that's here is also in this image over here. So it's kind of like a cool reference and an ode to the old place that is Shibuya Station. So I think that is a cool touch that's been added. So that's why I prefer this image, even though I like the lighting of 17.6. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to tell the agent that finally we have a relit and re-textured kind of image. So I think 17.11 kind of does it for me. The lighting is better and it's matched to the image that I liked, which was 17.6 for the lighting and 17.7 for the structure. Okay, that does it for Act 1's locations. I think after this what we'll do is we'll get into how to move forward with relation to the storyboarding. So that'll be an interesting one to catch. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we are going to go to the storyboard bit of things. Currently we have our characters locked, which is the dog and the professor. We have the locations for Act 1. And now we'll go to the storyboard sequencing. Before we go into the storyboard sequencing, I usually put in like a description of what I want the agent to do, because that's just how my workflow is. Like if you have some constraints or some process that you want to follow, you can always tell the agent and it'll follow your direction in that sense. Okay, so what I've actually done is before we go ahead, I told the agent that we are good with the locations and we want to start the storyboarding process. but it doesn't need to create each and every storyboard frame. The thing is that before, when we used to create storyboard frames, we needed to create each and every frame because the models worked that way, because we were stuck with first frame, last frame, and the video that was in between, right? Like now with multi-shot capabilities and plus with seed dance, we have the opportunity to not create every single frame, because just one single wide shot can help you create all the other frames like the close-ups, OTS shots, conversations within those 15 seconds. So now we can create 15-second sequences from single frames. So by creating lesser storyboard frames, not only do you save time, you save credits also. So I think it's like very useful to keep this in mind and let the agent know just in case. You can obviously follow your process, and if you prefer making each and every frame because you want to lock that in and you don't want to keep it open or like experiment at the video stage, you should do that. That would be ideal. After that, I've told it to also work on just act 1. I've told it that over here because, like I mentioned previously, I like to work on certain chunks of my project and then go forward, because I like to lock that in. For now, I would like to finish the storyboarding of act 1 and the video creation of act 1, put that onto the edit, and then come back for act 2. That's the way I follow my process. Again, yours could be different. Maybe you just want to finish the whole project and then come back to it. You can chat with it, jam with it, and figure out what's the next step. That's the best part of it. Okay, so we're back and we have a bunch of storyboard images that the agent has given me. Let's just check the notebook and see what all we have. So what I'm going to tell the agent right now is that I need some changes. I feel like we're missing some close-up shots that make us feel a little bit like closer to Hachiko. We need some like ultra close-ups, see his expressions, see the professor's expressions. I think that's a little bit missing right now. So I've written down something that I want to talk to the agent about and tell it that I want these close-ups to make it feel a little more cinematic. I want to make it feel a little more intimate, right? Like I want to see moments of joy, moments of happiness, joking around, a little bit playfulness, to tell the audience about the bond that these two share. So I think that is important, which I'm going to tell the agent now. So another little point here is that the agent, if you see over here, is saying ECU of Hachiko's face, ECU of the professor's face. I'm sure most of us know what this means, like even CU, like close up, right? In case you want the full forms and you're more comfortable with that, you can also tell the agent that you always want full forms, and it'll make sure that it always gives you that. Okay, so I've been iterating on the short breakdown with the agent for a bit now and just figuring out like what all is missing, what do I need, what needs to be redone. So I was kind of like, losing track of things. So I just asked the agent, like, where are we at? I've given it the script and the short breakdown of sorts already. So it has a memory of that. So it knows where we kind of are at. And it's also generated the images. So it knows what images I've kind of approved, where the review of mine is pending, and what is regenerated and awaiting review, right? So basis that, it's given me this really cool breakdown of sorts, basis the shot and which scene it's in, which is really cool and helpful to me. And I can just go through it and kind of start approving things. So I think this will be also really useful. And that's why I do it act by act, because there'll be so much more to go through. If you're doing a longer film, break it down into chunks, right? And see where everything is landing. Or else you kind of get lost in the length and the massive sea of images that you generate. So just finish one chunk and then move on to the next. Finish one chunk and move on to the next. That's the best way to do it. You can always follow your own process if you want. Okay, so we last left at where we were creating all the storyboard images for Act 1, and I was doing some iterations on the images. I wanted to add some images that were not kind of in the script that I had written. So I worked on that. I chatted with the agent, like you can see over here. Just told it, we'll do a quick recap. So I had my short list over here, and it gave me a full breakdown of what's pending, what's been locked, what needs reviews, right? And post that, I kept iterating with it. I felt like I need some more shots because, the more you think about it, the more the script evolves, changes and changes. So the agent helped me through that quite well. Interesting thing that I want to point out over here is that if you want to make like very minute changes, sometimes it's better to just do it on your own. For example, like I wanted to make like a close-up shot of the clock. I had the wide shot of the platform, but I wanted like a close-up of the same exact clock. Now it's a little difficult to get the close-up of the same exact thing in an image. If you attach the wrong images to it, or if you're over-prompting, you'll get something completely different, right? So if we scroll down a bit over here, you'll see that I got an other image compared to the clock that is here. So this is the clock that ultimately I liked in the wide shot. And I just wanted a close-up of the shot, right? Obviously, I wanted one when the professor leaves for the college, and I wanted one when he returns from college, because I'm doing a part in Act 1 when he returns, he meets Hachiko, right? So both these clocks were not working for me because they were kind of different from the clock that's in the wide shot that I've chosen. So that kind of breaks continuity. So what I did was I just closed the notebook and I'd seen what the agent had generated. You can see the prompt over here, you can see the attachment. So all I did was I closed this agent tab. I went to the place where the agent had prompted the clock for me. So I think it was this one. All I did was reuse the prompt, go to the manual prompter. Now you can see the agent had also put an other clock's reference into the prompt. Now this is because in the beginning I kind of had locked an other kind of clock. So while the agent remembered that and used that, it was my mistake. So I needed to remove it from the references attached to the Nano Banana prompt. So all I did was remove this attachment, and then it just generated the right clock over here, as you can see. So that's great, right? Like, so I always say that if you want to do like quick close-ups or something that's in a wide shot and you just want to zoom into it, you can tell the agent to just write you a prompt quickly. So you can just take that image, reprompt it, and change the prompt. Like, I want a close-up of this shot, I want a close-up of the clock, I want a close-up of the professor's expression in this image. That's just faster for you to do, right? Like, it just helps my process to like just take manual control for a little bit and then go back to the agent and start talking again. So yeah, that was one interesting piece of information that I had and I wanted to share it with you guys. Now we'll go back to the agent. Once I created that image though, I wanted to also lock that with the agent, because the agent would possibly not know that I've taken manual control and created that image. So all I did was, when it was doing the review of the images that we had, I would go and just tell it that for the clock, I want the close-up at image 40.2. Right? So now that's logged into the logbook that the agent has created for the shot breakdown. And now it'll remember that this is the shot that I want for that particular moment. So yeah, so now the agent believes that Act 1 is kind of done. And I think I'm just going to work on it a little bit and iterate it on a little bit more so that it's in a place where I like it. And then we'll move on from there. Now the agent is asking me to go into the video stage of Act 1, because in the beginning I told it I want to go act by act. So I want to finish storyboard, and then I want to finish the videos of that storyboard specifically for Act 1, so it remembers, and that's why it's asking me, should we start making the videos? Now I also usually create an other agent over here. So this is the part where you can create multiple agents, right? So what I do is I always create a seed dance prompting agent. All right, so now you can see that the seed dance 2.0 prompter agent is ready. Now, why do I do this? The reason is that, again, sometimes I want manual control in terms of I want to prompt seed dance, but that's just me at times. So what I tell the agent is to do a thorough research on how to prompt it. It'll look online for the best guides on how to prompt seed dance, the way it uses start frame, end frame, reference to video, and any other ways or tricks and tips that are there online. If you already have a set guide on how to prompt seed dance, a link or a PDF that maybe you've created, or a document where you've used your prompts previously, you can just upload that and you can tell it to learn how you prompt it, and the agent will catch on, and then it'll just continue recreating the prompts based on your template and the way you structure your prompt for seed dance, and then it can take control and create your videos from there. So it's quite interesting for me, because I like to chat with the agent and kind of jam with it in terms of what each shot or what mini sequence that I need and what are the beats of the sequence. So I want to talk to it in natural language, and then it comes up with a prompt which is the best way to kind of move seed dance to give you the output that you require. So I'm technically not actually prompting it. I'm giving it direction in terms of what I need in the scene, and then it comes up with the prompt to fulfill that direction that I've given it. Reference to video is one of my favorite ways to go with seed dance, because it's just so good at keeping character consistency and fidelity while also creating like multi-shot videos, right? Like, it's amazing. So I usually love to use reference to video more than anything. Okay, so I gave it exactly what I needed. I just wanted to do a test before we get into the video generation, so that the agent again is with me in terms of how I want to go about the process of video generation. You don't have to do this, but this is a part of my process which I usually always follow, because I want to make sure the agent follows the same method that I follow, and I want to use it like as an assistant. So now, after having the conversation with it and telling it exactly what I need in my prompt, what type of generation I want, like do I want reference to video, do I want image to video, after having that conversation, it came up with a prompt along with adding what images it'll be using, like the character references, so 2 images for that, for the 2 characters, and the home interiors reference also, so that we know exactly where the location is, right? Because we don't want it to come up with a different kind of location, because we had locked it in the storyboard. So now it's come up with the prompt, and I told it, like, let's run it and see the results. Run 2 generations of the same prompt, because obviously in one generation you can never exactly judge, because at the end of the day they are AI video models and you will get varied results for the same prompt. So I always like to run like 2 or usually 4 also, depending on how fast I want to fly with it. So now I got 2 results. Let's check them out. I've got this one. Both of them have the beats that I had put in. This shows like a little bit of bonding between the 2 fun moments like you encounter during the day. So yeah, so I think it did a pretty good job. So now what I'm going to try and do is basis all the storyboard shots that we had, I'm going to tell it to think in the same way. So I'm going to tell it like how I defined the beats in this shot. There have to be defined beats in those shots too. I'm sure it'll do a lot of the work for me, and I'll interject wherever I feel like I need some more nuanced feelings. So I'll take control again whenever I feel like I have to interject. First, I'll just let it create like a baseline of shots, so I can build off of that as a structure. So let's see where this goes. So I asked it what is its plan for the next shots once we had locked down on the way it's prompting the images to get the videos. And it's come up with a generation plan that I need. It's also marked this as done because we completed it and that was the first test, right? However, we can iterate on that, but I think I can just tell it to start creating the videos, and from there I can build off that. So let's just see where it's at. I want to skip this first shot, so I'll just... Okay, so we'll just sit back and wait until the generations are done by the agent. Okay, so Act 1's videos are almost done. I've got a good set of videos that I can play with and edit with right now. I think that there will be some shots that I want to redo when I feel like certain sequences or certain shots within those sequences need to be edited together and streamlined basis the story that I need and the way I want to show it. So I might have changes on that, but until then, I'm going to go back to my animation film director agent and I will ask it. Okay, so it's creating the shortlist that we need. My document that I had shared in the beginning that I had told you guys about, it does have not detailed but a moderately detailed breakdown. So I want the agent to go through it again and compile it, and then I want to see it once. And in case I want to add things in the middle of it, I can add those. I can jam with the agent, and then I'll go to the next step, which is basically generating the storyboard for Act 2. Same process that we had for Act 1, I'm going to follow it for Act 2. Meanwhile, my seed dance prompter agent is ready. So in case anything is missing over here, I can ask it to regenerate that. Okay, so some cool insights are obviously the models have limitations, right? We know that. And the agent also kind of knows that. So here it's telling me that both the ears are upright. I think we can take some creative liberties over here. Let's see if that comes across in all shots, or obviously he can perk his ears up in certain shots. That's fine. We had asked it to give the shot breakdown, so it's given me a very detailed scene by scene shot breakdown that is needed. So yeah, there's a lot to go through. So I'm going to go through that and figure things out on what's needed and what's not, and then I'll get back to telling the agent to start generating. Okay, so we've completed most of our video generations and it's looking quite cool. What I realized towards the tail end is that I don't have a title card slate, which basically means that I want the name of my short film to appear, right? Like the title sequence, like what is this about? So what I did is I went back to the agent and I kind of had a conversation with it that I needed the title card sequence. And here we go, that it started creating the frames. I told it what I want to name my film, which is Hachiko, and it added that. It was like that simple. I needed to make some tweaks to it because I felt like certain things are missing. Like I gave it direction. So what I wanted exactly is that I wanted the camera to start on this wall with photos of the professor and Hachiko, and then there's a gap in the center of those photos so that my title text, the title of the film, can fade in or animate in over there. And then I wanted the camera to kind of pan towards the right, where we see the professor and Hachiko kind of getting ready to go to the station. Hachiko is fooling around, jumping around the professor because he's excited. It's his daily routine. And then they leave, and then the sequence continues to the other shots. So I wanted to make this sequence, which I had not accounted for in the beginning, right? So I just started talking to the agent and told it exactly what I want, and then it started creating the frame. I gave a direction in terms of what I want, what the camera movements are, and what the actions are, and it kind of did it. So I'll just jam with the agent a little more to like perfect it a little bit, and then hopefully I'll go to the edit. So finally we are done with the title sequence shot also. I think I have most of my shots ready for the edit, so I'm going to take it into the edit software. It could be any software that you really love. It can be DaVinci, Adobe, whatever you like to do your edits, honestly. So I'm going to go there, I'm going to put my film together. In case there are some bits that I feel are missing or that aren't working, I'm going to fix that in the edit, generate some more with the agent, and then going to finally output my final film.